Well, good morning, everybody. I am the Bald Guy. I'm so happy you have returned as we continue our journey into Genesis chapter 6, God, Noah, and the Ark. Now, we come to our point in our story in 19 and 20 where basically God is telling Noah that all of these kinds of animals are going to come to him, and he is going to load them onto the ark to be saved. Now, they were going to come in pairs, a male and a female, and they would be in kinds. Now, first of all, what's a kind? Now, a kind is not specific breeds. So you didn't have two coyotes coming on. You didn't have two jackals coming on, and you didn't have two domestic dogs coming on. Same with cats. You didn't have all these different breeds of cats. You had the same kind. So there was just two dogs. There were two cats. And as far as the description goes of what these were, and the elephants, there weren't two mammoths, and then there wasn't two elephants. It was just the two kinds of an elephant. Now, what it looked like, we don't know. We can get it out of our head that it kind of looks like what it looked like right now, because the breeds had split off of what we consider what a breed is. Because we know that cats and dogs, they can twine together and make a different breed. But God made two of every kind of animal, okay? And then they bred off, and later we named the breeds, okay? Because remember we talked about, and you can go back to the beginning and see how the Bible does this. It kind of goes from one to the other. And that's how we understand our story. Is that the kinds of animals is what Adam named. He looked in, he said, this is a dog. These are dogs. These are cats. These are elephants. So forth and so on. He didn't specifically name what a breed of animal was going to be. So, when they looked at a wolf back then, they saw a dog, what we would consider a dog. They had a specific name for all of these kinds of animals. And that is a kind, and that's what God had told Noah to bring on the ark, was a kind. And like I said, what they actually look like, we will not know. We will not know until we get to heaven. So that we have faith on is that it was just two of these kinds of animals. So now we know what a kind is. So we can continue on our story, is that they brought them on. Now, how was this clarified, and how many animals came on the ark? Now that's the second thing that we need to discuss, because chapter 7, 2 and 3 clarifies of these kinds of animals that were brought onto the ark. Okay? What was brought onto the ark? There were 7 pairs of clean animals of every kind. And there was 2 pairs of unclean animals. Whoa, back the truck up. Clean and unclean, what are you talking about? And there we jumped to Deuteronomy, where clean and unclean animals are clarified as what they are. See how the Bible's doing this? So you understand that, remember what I talked about, where God, way back in the beginning, God tells Adam how to live. And he actually gave him the Mosaic Law, what we consider the Mosaic Law from Deuteronomy. And he told him that there are certain animals that can be eaten and used, sacrifices for food and for making skin, and other animals that were unhealthy and were absolutely no use and you should not touch. And the ones you shouldn't touch were unclean. And the unclean animals, if you just want a vague description, you'll have to go to Deuteronomy to find these unclean animals. But they were pigs, dogs, cats, horses, donkeys, rats, owls, hawks, vultures, things like that. Clean animals were anything that chewed the cud and had a divided hoof. Now, these were safe to eat and to be used. Cattle, deer, goats, sheep, birds, chickens, doves, ducks. Now, these things were safe to eat. Remember, they didn't have processing plants that they could clean everything up and be able to eat the stuff out of, and make it safe to eat. Today, there are certain things that are not safe to eat, certain things that are, but we don't follow that anymore. And which actually we probably should follow it to some extent, because God knew what he was doing, especially back then, because back then was a whole different way of life, okay? And there are certain things that they had to use and certain things that could be eaten directly from a fire that you shouldn't eat. Now, you're not going to grab a vulture and cut it down and try to eat it. In today's world, just off of fire, because you'll get sick. And a rat the same way. It's gross, okay? So you wouldn't want to do that. And so that is describing these kinds of animals that went onto the ark. Clean and unclean. So the vast amounts of animals, totally untrue. In all actuality, there was only approximately about 7,000 animals that went on the ark. Agreed, that is a lot. But it's not as many as people think there were. Okay, because he didn't take 2 pairs of every kind of animal and then on top of that took all of these 7 pairs of clean and unclean on top of it that add extra to it, as most scholars would think, because it was just a clarification of these kind of animals. Animals were divided into 2 classes. You had clean and you had unclean. That was it. The ones you don't mess with and the ones you can use. And back then, nobody followed it. Everybody got sick. I mean, it was a crazy mess. The ones that didn't follow God did not follow these laws, did not follow what God had told them to do. Noah did. And remember, he was the last one. So that is a clarification on that. Okay, so now we're in that we know that there was about 7,000. And there were 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal brought, and then there was only 2 pair of all unclean animals. So why the mix? Now let's talk about the mix just for a minute. Now, the mix is that animals breed at a much faster rate. Eggs and puppies and stuff, they have multiple at a time, so they can breed really fast. Well, God wanted the clean animals that they were going to be used, people were going to use, to be a lot more than the unclean. So he wanted that separation, so that way stuff wouldn't go extinct. All right? So that was the distinction between bringing more of a certain kind of animal than bringing the other ones, because they'd be used for sacrifices and for clothing, and other stuff would be hunted later. So they wanted that. And that separation had to be there. So the clean animals there would be more clean after the flood than there would be unclean. Oh God, man, he knows what he's doing, doesn't he? It's crazy. All right. So I see my time is short, and I'm going to stop here, because next video we're going to be talking about the dinos, man, and were they on the ark? But so far we've got a really good gist of how things are right now, of the clean and unclean animals that went on the ark. And there were 7,000 of them. Okay? And we'll pick up this topic again on my next video. So now let's focus on what we learned from this. How does it apply today? Is that God knows what he's doing, folks, in every aspect. And what we take away from this is that we don't separate the Bible, chapter and verses. It all mingles in together. And you can see that. If you read it, you can see it. Deuteronomy goes all the way back to Genesis, folks. Okay? Genesis chapter 6 fits in with Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and 3. See, it's all one big, beautiful story. And you've got to see it that way. You can't break it down. You can't take one thing from another. Okay, you got to understand the concept. You got to understand how the person wrote, who he's writing it to, so they would understand it. Okay, and that is how we understand God's word. Okay, so when you're reading it, you need to think of that concept. Okay, so now we've talked about the clean and unclean animals. We know how many were going to go on the ark, and we know how long it took. So we will pick up our conversation on the animals on the ark on my next video. I hope you learned a few things. Now, stay true to his word, folks. Keep reading. Keep understanding. This story is amazing. The beginning is just incredible. And I hope you've gotten a lot out of it as I have. We will continue our journey on my next video, discussing more about the animals and the loading process of this amazing ship. I'm the Bald Guy. I am out of here. God bless. Have a wonderful day, folks.